stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. I want to thank Pastor Carl Mitchell III for kind words that he had to say about the program. Now, everyone, if you have a message, you can use UBG Contact on Twitter. That's where you can contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, awesome American suggestions. It is the main contact point for the show. Let's get into it. You may have noticed a few different things about the presentation of this program. First, you might have noticed the cover picture, which I've used for YouTube and for the Spreaker upload of this program. It is one that may well generate some complaints. And why wouldn't it? It's a Japanese, quote-unquote, soldier with a Chinese baby skewered on the bayonet of his rifle during the Japanese occupation of China in the 1930s and 40s. I went looking for this image deliberately to use it as my cover. It is one of the most vile and heart-wrenchingly offensive images ever produced by man, but it explains the rather strange title of this program, which is that backward-pointing arrow on the keyboard. That's known as the less than sign. You see, I'm going to talk today about the end result of treating other people as less than, and in a sense, I'm going to use this Times Awesome American as an example of that, and another lesson. In recent years, certain organizations and individuals on our college and university campuses have begun insisting on what they call safe spaces. Places where they do not have to be in the presence of those of a certain skin color. This self-imposed apartheid is based at least partly on the misguided theory that those of a certain color cannot be racist because they have not been on a power par with those of another skin color. This has led to demonstrations, riots, people of a certain skin color being beaten up by gangs of people of another skin color, and all justified because the attackers see their victims as less than. What has every slave-holding culture done? Cast their own slaves as less than. Want some examples? Ancient Rome. Since we have been able to capture these slaves in war, we are obviously the stronger. Therefore the gods have decreed that they shall be our slaves. You see, the slaves of ancient Rome were seen as weaker, and therefore less than. Later cultures that colonized were bringing a civilizing influence into this area. These people are actually culturally savage and should thank us. The British Empire and others, justification because the people that they enslaved were to them less than. Antebellum America. Not only did people keep slaves in the Bible, but it is scientifically proven that the construction of the body of the black person is meant for work, and that of the white person is meant for intellectual pursuits. The American slaveholders of their day, justifying their practice of slavery by declaring black people as less than. This brings us to the World War II era and our picture. How much anti-Semitism do you suppose there was in Germany before the rise of the Nazi Party? Probably not much more or less than in any other part of the world. But it took only about 10 or 15 years, in the 1920s and 1930s, to create a situation where the German people were prepared to take segments of their own society, Jewish people, gays, gypsies, people with disabilities, harass them, remove their property from them, and then have them executed. It didn't take long before those minorities in Germany were viewed as less than. And we saw the result. Halfway around the world, the warrior code of Bushido was sold in such a way that Japanese soldiers and sailors saw those they were sent to conquer as less than. And if you look at that cover picture, you see the result. See, anytime someone decides that they have an ultimate moral superiority to another group, that gives them tacit permission to treat that group as less than. And from that point, treatment of that group can reach any extreme. You want another example? Right now, we're in the time of Ramadan 2017. Mohammedans view everyone who is not Islamic as less than. Why? Because the Quran, the Hadith, the Seers, all tell them that that's the case. So they're bombing, beheading, torturing, and trading in slaves, including African slaves, right now, in the second decade of the 21st century, because their doctrine tells them everyone else is less than. So if the young people in the United States of America are being taught similar hatred, with possible similar results, who's going to stand up against it? This is where Evergreen State College professor Brett Weinstein comes in, and why he is this time's awesome American. Listen to this report, filed on Saturday, May the 27th, by Drew Mickelson of KING-TV, Channel 5, Seattle, Washington.
Oh, hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist faculty have got to go, hey, hey.
2 days of protests proved to be enough for Brett Weinstein, who took his biology class off campus to a downtown Olympia park.
I have been told by the chief of police that it is not safe for me to be on campus.
Weinstein says he's been unfairly labeled as a racist, the target of graffiti and protests this week that made him feel frightened. He blames the outrage on his stance regarding proposed changes to college policies regarding race, including opposing a move to have race play a larger role in who is hired to teach.
When one opposes these proposals, what happens is one is stigmatized as anti-equity, and because I am light-skinned, the narrative suggests that I'm a person who has benefited from privilege and that I'm trying to preserve that privilege in the face of a legitimate challenge.
If he feels unsafe or frightened on this campus for 2 days, he can only imagine on what Black and brown bodies have felt for years. There are alumni reaching out to us and saying, I graduated here from here 7 years ago, and I'm glad that someone has finally said something.
That was one of the students who was involved in this week's protest. While some are upset about that professor, they say the bigger issue is what they believe is the systemic racism here on the campus. There were some small demonstrations today, but nothing as large or as loud as what we saw earlier this week. At the Evergreen State College campus in Olympia, I'm Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.
Now that's in a report called Professor Told He's Not Safe on Campus After College Protests. And I don't know about you, but I find it fascinating that the quote-unquote student in this report was not only unidentified, but had her face pixelated. However, she seems quite comfortable with the possibility that this man could face physical attacks if all he does is appear on campus to do his job. Again, she and those protesting Professor Weinstein see him as less than. I'll get a little bit more into this through an opinion piece by Eugene Volk in the Washington Post, dated Friday, May the 26th, 2017. This one titled, Professor Told He's Not Safe on Campus After College Protests at Evergreen State College, Washington. I have been told by the chief of police it's not safe for me to be on campus, said Evergreen State College professor Brett Weinstein, who held his Thursday class in a downtown Olympia, Washington park. An administrator confirmed the police department advised Weinstein it might be wise to stay off campus for a day or so. Demonstrations involving as many as 200 students filled classrooms and the president's office on campus on Tuesday and Wednesday. Protesters are upset over what they believe are racist policies at the college, and some called for Weinstein to resign. Earlier this school year, Weinstein raised concerns about proposed policy changes, including one that would have race play a larger role in the hiring process. The Washington Times' Bradford Richardson reports that part of the hostility towards Weinstein also seems to stem from his objection to a day of absence in which white people were invited to leave campus for a day. Here is Weinstein's email objecting to the proposed day-long ejection of whites, as reproduced by Heat Street. And I'll stop here also to say that this is why Professor Brett Weinstein of Evergreen State College is this Times Awesome American. To continue with the email. Dear Rashida, when you first described the new structure for the day of absence / day of presence at a past faculty meeting where no room was left for questions, I thought I must have misunderstood what you said. Later emails seemed to muddy the waters further while inviting commitments to participate. I now see from the bold-faced text in this email that I had indeed understood your words correctly. There is a huge difference between a group or coalition deciding to voluntarily absent themselves from a shared space in order to highlight their vital and underappreciated roles, the theme of the Douglas Turner Ward play Day of Absence, as well as the recent Women's Day walkout, and a group or coalition encouraging another group to go away. The first is a forceful call to consciousness, which is, of course, crippling to the logic of oppression. The second is a show of force and an act of oppression in and of itself. You may take this letter as a formal protest of this year's structure, and you may assume I will be on campus on the day of absence. I would encourage others to put phenotype aside and reject this new formulation, whether they have registered for it already or not. On a college campus, one's right to speak, or to be, must never be based on skin color. If there was interest in a public presentation and discussion of race through a scientific / evolutionary lens, I would be quite willing to organize such an event, as it is material I have taught in my own programs and guest lectured on at Evergreen and elsewhere. Everyone would be equally welcome and encouraged to attend such a forum, irrespective of ethnicity, belief structure, native language, political leanings, or position at the college. My only requirement would be that people attend with an open mind and a willingness to act in good faith. If there is interest in such an event, please let me know. These words, bravely written, have endangered Professor Weinstein's job and his person. It has to be said here that this is an example in what I've said in a lot of my programs. There's a reason they call it progressivism, because it only gets progressively worse and worse. My guess is that Professor Weinstein voted for President Obama twice, and as you can hear from his email, he knows all of the politically correct phraseology to use, and is a true believer in progressivism. There's only one problem. Progressivism becomes progressively more and more savage until it treats everyone who does not slavishly adhere to every one of its precepts as less than. And in Professor Weinstein's case, we see the results. People, the fact that our young are being taught that some are incapable of racism and therefore able to practice it on others is the exact sort of mindset that leads to the cover picture for this program. It uses twisted logic to open the door for hate. So what can we do? My proposal is that federal funds be withheld from any and all institutions of higher learning that do not immediately halt the practice of segregation and the treatment of certain groups on campus as less than. We'll never completely eradicate racism because it is an evil that will not be defeated completely until all evil is driven from the earth. But we can follow the example of those who have fought and died before us. Recognize that we are all the same inside. Reject apartheid. Live together in peace. And never treat anyone in any group that is willing to join us in the spirit of equality as less than. And that's it for this time. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2017. Anno Domini.